Hi, I'm Maribel. I flew 9 hours from a war zone to celebrate my sister's birthday. And the first thing I heard when I walked through the door was, "You don't belong here." They smiled in photos without me, gave my gift to her, and erased my name from everything. For years, I thought I was just missing moments. But turns out, I was being removed on purpose. They called me unstable, dramatic, ungrateful. But what do you do when the people you love quietly rewrite your story without you? The desert air felt crisper than I remembered. Maybe it was the altitude, or maybe it was the years. Either way, stepping out of that terminal in Santa Fe, after 9 hours on a plane, felt less like a homecoming and more like a test. The kind where the answers were already filled in. Just not by you. My duffel was still heavy on my shoulder as I climbed into the rental car, the wheels crunching over sun-baked gravel. I hadn't told anyone exactly when I'd land. That had once felt like a romantic gesture. Now, I wondered if it had been my first mistake. Surprise used to be a gift. Now it felt like an intrusion. Driving through town was like flipping through an old photo album, familiar corners aged by time, storefronts I swore had never changed, yet felt like strangers. The adobe houses still held that burnt orange hue, soft against the evening light. My mother's neighborhood hadn't changed. Neither had the way my stomach clenched when I turned onto her street. I parked 2 houses down. Not because I was hiding, but because I needed a breath before walking into whatever waited. I looked down at the bouquet in the passenger seat. Roses, dusty from travel, but intact. I'd bought them during my layover, thinking they might say what I couldn't. The music spilled over the fence first. Laughter, clinking glasses, the kind of cheer that lives in shared memories. I opened the side gate slowly, slipping into the backyard where strings of lights glowed above a crowd I mostly recognized. Then I heard her. "She doesn't belong here. This was supposed to be our moment." Isolde's voice. Clear, sharp, and not meant for me, but not exactly hidden either. My hand clenched around the paper wrapping of the flowers. I didn't move, just listened. "She shows up whenever it suits her," Isolde continued. "Now she wants to play family again?" A woman, maybe Celine, I wasn't sure, laughed softly in reply. "Well, you're the one who's been holding this place together. She left." They didn't see me, but I saw them. My sister's back turned, dress perfect, posture poised, like she was still on that high school stage, stealing every spotlight she could. And our mother, standing beside her, nodding like it all made sense. I didn't say a word, just stood there with the roses like some prop from a play I hadn't been cast in. Eventually, someone spotted me and called out a hello, too bright, too late. The shift in energy was subtle but visible, like someone had just noticed a wine stain on a white tablecloth. Isolde turned, feigned surprise. "Oh my God, you're here! We didn't think you'd make it." I smiled. Because that's what you do when you've been stabbed gently. A niece, Emma, I think, waved at me with sticky fingers. A server gestured to a seat with a napkin draped over it. I followed, weaving through clusters of family, past the table of gifts. My roses were gently pried from my hands and placed there, an afterthought. Then came the chair. A flimsy metal fold-up, positioned near the portable restroom, well behind the real family table. No place card, no plate. I sat anyway. Funny, I thought, how the place they put you reveals the place they think you deserve. From my vantage point, I watched Isolde give her toast. She thanked everyone who'd held the fort while she rebuilt the family home, who never let go. Her voice trembled just enough to pass for sincerity. Everyone applauded. I clapped too. Because that's what you do when your silence is the only armor you have left. A guest leaned over, some second cousin I didn't recognize, and asked, "Didn't know you were back, visiting, or—" I smiled again. "Just for the celebration." "Well," they said, already turning back to their wine. "Good you could make it." No one asked where I'd come from. No one mentioned the uniform folded in my bag, or the months I'd spent waking to sirens and sandstorms. I wasn't the returning soldier. I was the inconvenient guest. The speeches rolled on. Jokes were made. My name wasn't among them. I found myself scanning the crowd, counting the faces who looked at me and quickly looked away. And then I saw it. The roses. My roses. Now sitting on the gift table, with a tag that read, "From all of us." I blinked. Once, my breath didn't catch, but something inside me did. A small snap, not loud, just final. I glanced at Isolde. She was laughing near our mother, a flute of champagne in one hand, the picture of grace, of success, of home. I leaned back in that uncomfortable chair, hands folded, expression neutral. It wasn't the chair, it wasn't the whisper. It was the moment I realized I was edited out of the story. The clinking of glasses hadn't stopped since I arrived. Isolde had a way of making even water sound expensive. She stood beneath a canopy of twinkle lights, her hair curled to perfection, posture rehearsed like she was back in one of her pageant days. I stayed near the edge of the gathering, my plate mostly untouched, wondering how many people here actually knew where I had come from, or how many cared. Then came the speech. Isolde tapped her glass, and the crowd hushed like someone had called action. She scanned the room with a gaze that always knew where the camera was, then smiled. "I just want to thank everyone who's been here for me, really here, through the hard times, the renovations, the loneliness, the rebuilding, emotional and physical. You all know who you are." She paused for effect. Her eyes skimmed past me like I was part of the wallpaper. "For those who never left, I couldn't have done it without you." The applause was loud, warm. I forced my lips into a polite curve, feeling them dry at the corners. It was like being praised in reverse, thanked for the absence I hadn't chosen. There was something cruel about being spoken around so artfully. Minutes later, the servers rolled out a large white cake with delicate desert roses piped along the edges. I recognized it immediately. It was the one I had commissioned from a bakery in Doha during a sleepless layover. I'd given them a photo of the house, exact color palette, and even the phrase, "to the one who keeps us whole." It had cost more than the flight home. No one mentioned my name. "Where's it from?" someone asked. Vera shrugged without looking at me. "I don't know. It just showed up. Maybe a fan of hers?" That word, fan, lodged in my ribs like a splinter. I turned away before they cut it. I didn't need to see someone else's knife slicing through my intentions. Later, people began drifting toward a college wall set up near the patio. A photo timeline. Isolde as a child, teen, college grad. There were holiday shots, smiling groups, even a few candid ones clearly taken with care. I wandered over out of habit. There was a photo of me in uniform, clearly from my last deployment, but the label beneath it read Isolde, Memorial Parade. My name wasn't there. My rank wasn't either. "You two looked so alike back then," a cousin said casually, glancing at the tag. "Easy to get mixed up." I stared at the label. No one made a move to fix it. I didn't either. What was the point? Even if I corrected it, they'd still remember it the wrong way. By now, it was late evening. The crowd had thinned, the music a little softer. I wandered to the gift table, mostly to check on the flowers I'd brought. They were there, but the card had been removed. A new tag read, "From all of us." Of course. As I turned to leave the table, a woman I didn't recognize handed me a glossy paper bag with the event logo on it. "Here you go, for the guests." I opened it. Generic candles, a thank you card, and a voucher for a spa discount. Across the way, I saw guests leaving with heavy, custom-engraved boxes. Mine had a tag, M Guest. I didn't bother correcting it. I returned to my seat, that same shaky folding chair near the back, and looked out over the party again. Laughter still floated across the lawn. At the center of it all, Isolde posed with Vera and a few close friends for a photo, the kind that would be on social media before the night ended. The photographer counted down, clicked twice. Everyone looked stunning. By the time I checked my phone, the photo was already posted. Surrounded by the ones who've always been here, my rock, my home, my people. I wasn't in the frame. It wasn't that I didn't exist. It was that they made sure no one remembered I ever did. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the edge of the guest bed, one foot resting on top of my duffel, like it was still the only thing that belonged to me. The sounds of the party outside had faded, but the echoes stayed. Isolde's voice in that smug tone, Vera's shrug, the laughter of strangers. That morning, I opened my inbox. It was mostly junk, military newsletters, spam from airlines. But buried in the middle was an old email thread, sent to the family, about a reunion 2 years ago. I was never looped in. The last reply was from Isolde. "No need to bother Maribel, she's always away." It wasn't the first time. There were birthdays where no one texted. Photos from Mother's Day gatherings I hadn't even known were happening. And then there was that fundraiser for veterans 2 years ago. A local women's charity had raised money using my deployment photos, but the caption beneath them read, "Isolde's tribute to her family's military legacy." My name, rank, and story had been scrubbed. I'd asked Vera about it. She'd smiled like I was making a scene. She meant well. "You're so sensitive sometimes." I wasn't sensitive. I was tired. Later that afternoon, I walked into the kitchen to get water and overheard Celine gushing to Vera. "She always finds the best gifts," Celine said. "That music box? I mean, where does she even find things like that?" My hand froze on the fridge handle. That box. It wasn't just a gift. I had it custom-made in cobble, carved walnut lined with crushed velvet. I had tracked down a craftsman between convoys, sent it home with a note tucked inside. It was supposed to be from me, but no one had mentioned it. I found Vera wiping the counter. "Did you know Isolde didn't buy that box?" I asked, tone flat. She didn't meet my eyes. Isolde was just being thoughtful. That was the moment something cracked. I didn't argue, just nodded and walked to the living room, where the family memory wall had been carefully arranged along the far wall. Photos covered every inch. Smiling faces, weddings, anniversaries, baby showers. My photo from Afghanistan was gone. In its place, a shot of Isolde speaking at a charity brunch, mid-speech, hand on heart. The one picture that had once sat beside it, my graduation from Fort Sam Houston, wasn't there either. I heard footsteps behind me. "Vera." "We didn't have room for everything," she said, like I'd asked. I turned to face her. "You always find room for what matters." She didn't respond. I left the house and walked until my phone buzzed from missed steps. Found a bench by the dogwood trees and sat down, opened my notes app. I started listing every omission, every edit they made, forgotten invitations, reassigned gifts, photos retagged. My own mother calling me too intense for family events. One by one, I typed them out. "Not all wars are fought overseas," I whispered aloud. "Some are in the living room." I went back to the guest room, poured out the contents of the gift bag again. Nestled between the coupons and scented candle samples, I saw it. A sticker with gold foil lettering. "For valued attendees only." They didn't even bother hiding it anymore. I peeled it off and held it between my fingers for a long time before finally flicking it into the trash. Then I picked up my phone, opened my list, and highlighted every line. I wasn't going to disappear quietly. The party rolled on like a machine that didn't care who had fallen off it. People mingled in curated corners of the yard, soft jazz floating from the Bluetooth speaker tucked under a potted plant. I stood near the cooler, sipping flat soda from a paper cup, trying not to let the sharp things inside me spill over. Behind me, I heard a voice. Two, actually. Low, cutting. "Well, Maribel's always been intense. She never really fit the family rhythm, did she?" Laughter. Not cruel, but complicit. I didn't flinch. I didn't turn. I just placed the cup on the table, walked away like I was going to the bathroom, but I wasn't. I was heading toward the flower bed, where Vera had retreated earlier with garden shears and that same apron she wore to every church potluck. She didn't look up when I approached. "I heard something just now," I said evenly. "About me. Nothing new." Still, she didn't glance at me. She clipped a hydrangea with precision. "People say things." "I know, and so do you." I stepped closer. "Why does it feel like this party is more about who I'm not than who I am?" Vera sighed, finally raising her head. "You've changed, Maribel." "That's not an answer." She wiped her hand on her apron. "You left, you know. Not just physically, emotionally, spiritually. You come back and expect everything to stay as it was." "No, Mom. I expect to still count." She shook her head, soft and tired. "You're not the same girl who left. This family doesn't know how to talk to you anymore." I let that settle, like acid. Then I said, "Maybe you never really knew me at all." Her face didn't change, but her silence screamed. I left her there, holding flowers she didn't even grow herself, just arranged. Back inside, a photographer was herding everyone toward the patio for a group shot. I stood to the side, watching the crowd position themselves, lining up like little soldiers of loyalty. Isolde raised a hand and called out, "Okay, locals only for this one, those who've kept the family warm." Laughter erupted. Flashbulbs clicked. I froze. I was standing 3 feet away, invisible. A cousin leaned toward another. "She's always been so dramatic." I walked upstairs. No one stopped me. The guest room was dim. I sat on the bed and opened the voice memo app on my phone. Tapped record. "They want to erase me softly," I said, "but I'm done whispering my worth." Then I opened my laptop and started pulling every document I had. Bank transfers, email threads, property statements. I wasn't gathering ammo. I was gathering facts. Truth didn't need volume. It needed receipts. The house had gone quiet by midnight. Most guests had filtered out, and only the buzz of traffic remained beyond the stucco walls. I lay back on the bed, hands behind my head, eyes on the ceiling fan slowly clicking above me. My phone vibrated once. A message, unknown number. "Hey, I think you should know what's been said about you. Meet me tomorrow?" It was signed with a single letter. A. Alexander. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. Maybe I wasn't the only one ready to speak. The night had started to cool, and the crowd had thinned. The sky above the yard faded from burnt peach to slate. I stepped out into the backyard, needing a moment away from the drone of clinking glasses and artificial laughter. That's when I saw her, Isolde, lit by her phone screen, standing alone near the potted cacti like a queen surveying a kingdom. I didn't hesitate. I walked up slowly, deliberately, not bothering to mask the weight in my voice. "Do you even realize what this night has felt like for me?" She didn't look up from her phone. "Maribel, it's not always about you. You made your choices." "I did," I said, "and now I'm making another one. I won't let you write my absence into your story anymore." Her lips curled into that dismissive half-smile I knew too well. "You're always so serious. That uniform really did something to you." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I turned around and walked back toward the house, every step quieter than my restraint deserved. By the time I reached the guest room, my phone buzzed. A message from Jenny, an old high school friend I hadn't seen since graduation. "Is this about you?" she wrote, with a screenshot attached. Isolde's Instagram story. A photo of her with Vera, Selene, and a few others from the night. The caption read, "So grateful for those who stuck around and didn't run from the family when things got real." My heart didn't race. It didn't break. It cooled, solidified. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed a comment under the post. My first public word in years. Real strength isn't about staying close to dysfunction. It's about leaving it behind and still loving yourself. I hit send. Later, as the party buzzed back to life, I slipped into the living room, scanned the table of cards and gifts, and found what I was looking for. The small yellow envelope I'd written to my niece. I reached for it, just as Isolde appeared. "Taking things back now?" she asked loudly, drawing a few eyes from the drink station. I looked at her, steady. "No, just what's mine, and what you don't get to rewrite." A hush settled in the room. I hadn't raised my voice, but everyone had heard. Vera stepped forward, wineglass in hand. "Can we not ruin the evening?" she asked, a half plea, half warning. "You've enjoyed enough," I said. "It's my turn to speak." No one moved. No one interrupted. I walked out the front door, letter in hand. My shoulders were square. My heart, for once, didn't hesitate. As I passed the driveway, I heard one of my aunts mutter to someone behind me. "She's always had a flair for drama." I kept walking. Because no one ever calls it drama when a man demands dignity. But when a woman does it, suddenly it's unbecoming. Back in the guest room, I folded my uniform into the duffel bag. The air was still thick with party noise and the scent of overcooked hors d'oeuvres. I sat on the edge of the bed and let my body feel the ache of silence. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was done. The phone buzzed again. New message, unknown number. "You're not wrong. You're just the first to say it out loud. Meet me tomorrow. A. Alexander." I read it once, then again. Finally, I smiled. Just slightly. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one who wanted to change the ending. We met at an old diner tucked between two dusty art galleries in downtown Santa Fe. The kind of place with cracked red booths and waitresses who never needed a notepad. Arthur looked out of place in a navy polo, holding a manila envelope like it was radioactive. I slid into the booth across from him without saying hello. He cleared his throat. I should have said something sooner. I waited. They've been planning this for months, maybe longer. I found this tucked in Vera's file cabinet after she asked me to scan some old paperwork. He passed me the envelope. Inside were 2 crisp copies of the family trust paperwork. One dated 2 years ago, with my name clearly listed under beneficiaries for the ancestral property. The second, more recent version had my name neatly omitted. "Isolde had it redrafted," he added. "She said you weren't involved enough to be listed." I didn't speak. I just kept my eyes on the signatures. Vera's, in looping cursive, and Isolde's, sharp and slanted. No attempt at hiding it, just bold, clean betrayal. "You okay?" Arthur asked. I looked up. "What do you think?" He nodded slowly, guilt spreading across his forehead in creases. "I figured as much." After we parted ways, I drove straight to the house, not out of impulse, but with purpose. I walked in through the side door without knocking. No one noticed. They were too busy organizing flower vases for whatever follow-up brunch Isolde had scheduled. Upstairs, I went to the attic and found the old cedar chest, the one marked "Family Keepsakes." Dust coated the edges like warning tape. I opened it and dug through old albums, newspaper clippings, a few broken Christmas ornaments, until I found it. A card. Yellowed. Addressed to me in my father's handwriting. I opened it slowly. Inside, "To my daughter on her 18th. Always proud of you, wherever you are." Unopened, sealed until now. Vera had kept it hidden, in a chest full of memories that didn't belong to her. I whispered, "He did remember me." It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It sharpened, focused me. I packed my things calmly after that. Every shirt, every notebook, every photo frame that hadn't already been repurposed for someone else's narrative. I left the wall art, left the comforter, left the ceramic mug that read "Best Sister," that I now realized had never been meant for me in the first place. But I took the memory chest. And the card. When I got back to the Airbnb, I didn't sit. I opened my laptop, created a folder named Ownership, uploaded scans of the trust papers, photos of the card, screenshots of text threads. I drafted a message to Lydia, my old roommate from Fort Sam, who was now a paralegal in Albuquerque. Is it too late to fight for what's mine? I hit send. My phone buzzed around 8:30 p.m. Voicemail from Vera. You're overreacting, Maribel. Don't make this ugly. This family has been through enough. I didn't bother playing it a second time. Instead, I replied to her with a text. Too late, I already printed the receipts. Then I tucked my father's card into a leather folder and zipped the duffel closed. It was their move now, and I had more than silence on my side. Alexander chose the one place in town that felt like it hadn't changed in 2 decades. A bar that smelled faintly of wood polish and fried pickles, with a jukebox that still ate quarters. I spotted him in the far booth, nursing a coffee he probably didn't order for the taste. I slid into the seat across from him, not bothering with small talk. He cut straight to it. They're already spinning it, he said, voice low. To the rest of the family, you're the unstable one now. Emotionally volatile. They're laying groundwork. I stared at him. And you're just now telling me? I didn't know how bad it had gotten until Selene started calling around, he said. She's pushing Isolde aside to anyone who'll listen. Vera's contacting extended family, trying to clarify what's happening before you embarrass the family further. Her words. I leaned back. She's planning a counter-offensive. Alexander nodded once. You should be ready. I was. More than he knew. By the time I got back to my rental, the texts had already started. Aunt Clara, you know your mom's heart isn't what it used to be. You're scaring her. An old family friend I hadn't heard from in years. Isolde says you're angry, that you refused therapy after the war, that you're lashing out now. This wasn't an accident. It was a coordinated strike, emotionally polished, socially acceptable, and quietly devastating. They weren't just trying to erase me. They were replacing me with a version easier to dismiss. I read the messages once, twice. Then I archived them, filed them away like evidence. A day later, it went public. Selene published a blog post on her lifestyle site. When family becomes toxic, learning to let go of loved ones who won't grow. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. She used phrases only I would recognize. Silent wars. The box filled with old letters. The veteran who returned home but never really came back. Comments flooded in. Strangers praising her bravery, calling her a beacon of healing, thanking her for speaking the truth about difficult relatives. Isolde shared it on her own page with a heart emoji and one line. This. So much this. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I opened a clean document and began compiling. Every receipt, every message, screenshots, documents. And then I drafted my own statement. Not for the internet, for lawyers, for my own clarity. Just the facts. No bitterness, no emotional punctuation. They called me unstable? Let's see how stable my paper trail was. That evening, I reached out to Lydia from Fort Sam. She was now an attorney with a focus on military estate fraud and family civil litigation. I sent her the documents and said, I want to pursue every legal avenue, quietly but completely. The sun had just set behind the mountains when my phone buzzed again. A voice note from Vera. Her tone was thick with feigned hurt. You've made this harder than it had to be. You're tearing this family apart. And for what? Some card? A photo? A piece of paper? I played it once, then saved it in a new folder on my desktop. I titled it, Evidence. Then I whispered aloud to myself, staring at the screen like it was the first honest mirror I'd looked into in years. If they wanted war, they should have remembered who taught me how to fight. The invitation came through a voicemail from Vera, laced with a tone too smooth to be genuine. She said it was just a small dinner. To clear the air, she claimed, to bring everyone back to the table. But I knew better. I could smell a setup before I even pulled into the driveway. The dining room looked like a magazine spread. Linen napkins folded into neat triangles, candles lit in crystal holders that only came out when company mattered. The table groaned with roasted chicken, casseroles, and polite tension. Vera was all smiles. Isolde greeted me like a politician. Her eyes said, "You're here because we allowed it." I sat at the far end, my place card reading Maribel, as if that alone was proof I'd been included. We made it halfway through the meal before Isolde couldn't help herself. "We all just want peace," she said, wine glass in hand, tone casual. "Even if some of us can't handle being out of the spotlight." Forks paused. Someone chuckled too loudly, trying to break the tension. I looked at Vera, who offered me a tight smile that didn't touch her eyes. I reached into my purse, pulled out a small speaker, and pressed play. The room went silent. Vera's voice filled the space, clear and unmistakable. "We just need to make sure the house stays in the family. Real family. She hasn't earned it. Not the way Isolde has." Then Isolde. "Exactly. Let her keep her memories. That's all she really wants." Silence fell like a curtain. I stood slowly and met Vera's eyes. "You always wanted the world to see a perfect family," I said. "Let's start with the truth." No one moved. No one dared to touch their food. "I didn't come here to be forgiven. I came to be heard." My uncle cleared his throat. "She was the only one who ever sent anything when she was overseas," he said, voice low but firm. "Birthdays, holidays, every year." Vera waved a hand dismissively. "This isn't the time." "No," I cut her off. "It's the only time, and I'm done being quiet." I raised my glass, water, not wine, and lifted it with a steady hand. "To everyone who's ever been erased politely, I see you." Then I placed a thick manila folder in the center of the table. Inside, copies of financial transfers, screenshots of emails, signed statements, years of proof. Every piece dated, cross-referenced, undeniable. I didn't wait for them to open it. I turned and walked to the door. "Maribel!" Vera called after me, her voice cracking with something that almost sounded like panic. "If you walk out, don't bother coming back." I paused at the threshold, one hand on the doorknob. "Funny," I said without turning around. "I thought I already left years ago." The next morning, my phone was a war zone. Missed calls, group texts, screenshots. One voicemail from my aunt, another from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't listen to any of them, just scrolled, scanned, and archived. Then one message stopped me. It was from Aunt Irene. Attached was a screenshot of a group chat. Vera had sent a voice memo with the caption, "For context, in case Maribel tries to spin this." I hesitated only a second before hitting play. Vera's voice, sharp and clear, filled my silent rental. "It's not about fairness. It's about who stays in the picture. That's what people remember. Not who left, not who served. The ones who remain, that's who deserves the legacy." The room spun just slightly. I played it again. Then one more time. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I wanted to absorb every nuance, every unfiltered belief she'd probably been hiding for years behind those tight smiles and empty compliments. A few minutes later, another cousin messaged me privately. Just 3 words. "You were right." And then, "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a document and added one more bullet to my growing list of receipts. By noon, the blog post dropped. Celine again, this time doubling down. When boundaries are weaponized, how victims become villains. It didn't use names, but the story was clear, the imagery, the metaphors, the conveniently manipulated timeline. This time, though, I was ready. I uploaded the audio recording of Vera's confession to a private cloud link, paired it with screenshots from her own messages, attached the payout report for military stipends that had been claimed under my name while I was deployed, funneled into an account Vera controlled. Then I wrote a short paragraph. "No narrative is complete without context. Here's mine." I posted it to the Veterans Network, to my professional page, and sent it to a reporter who had covered military estate fraud before. Within hours, it was reshared. By fellow veterans, by women's legal groups, even by a couple of distant relatives who'd once ignored my holiday cards. Support came in quietly at first, direct messages, nods of solidarity, but then louder. Public comments on Celine's post questioning her ethics. One user tagged the Department of Veteran Affairs. Another posted, "This is what systemic erasure looks like." Later that day, another message came through. This one not meant for me. A misfired group text from Lennox, Isolde's husband. She really thought they still cared. LOL. He tried to unsend it. He failed. The fracture lines became canyons. That night, Vera called. Her voice cracked before she even got past. Hello. They're turning on me, she said. Is that what you wanted? To destroy your own mother? I closed my eyes. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped protecting lies. Click. Within the next 48 hours, 3 relatives openly distanced themselves from Vera and Isolde, publicly and with receipts. One uncle revoked power of attorney. Another removed them from a joint family trust account. The cracks they tried to cover with smiles were now jagged, visible, and irreversible. And then the certified envelope came. I found it tucked under the door of the Airbnb, stamped with a legal mediation firm's logo. Request for formal mediation regarding family property. I placed it on the kitchen table, next to my father's unopened birthday card. My fingers grazed both, one heavy with memory, the other with consequence. Let's put it all on the table, I said quietly. Legally, the waiting room at Morgan & Vale was quieter than I expected. No phones ringing, no nervous whispers, just the steady hum of air conditioning and the soft sound of my lawyer flipping pages beside me. Her name was Clarice Morgan, a former JAG with a demeanor like cold steel in a silk wrap. She glanced over her glasses at me. You've built a solid case, Maribel. This isn't about revenge. It's about rectification. I nodded once, steady. Fraudulent omission of a co-beneficiary, intentional misrepresentation of a shared asset. Her pen tapped twice on the document. And you have the paper trail. The motion to contest the property transfer was filed by noon. By 3, Vera and Isolde had been served. That night, I didn't wait for fallout. I watched it happen in real time. A woman from my old church, Donna Griggs, messaged me privately. I always wondered why you were never spoken about. They'd mention Isolde's charity work, but not you. It never sat right. Other messages followed. Quiet support, subtle thumbs up. One by one, the silence shifted. But Vera wasn't quiet. She posted on Facebook that evening, a long-winded status cloaked in religious language and martyrdom. Sometimes, a mother's heart breaks because her own children turn against her. I've only ever loved. I've only ever given. The comments poured in, many sympathetic, but not all. I didn't write a rebuttal. I uploaded screenshots, bank statements, my military pay stub, the exact date she began collecting stipends under my name. No caption, just facts. The post was reshared, first by a veterans' rights group, then by an estate law nonprofit. They didn't need me to say a word. The truth had its own vocabulary. Some relatives vanished into silence. No calls, no messages. The same ones who once asked for holiday cards and wedding toasts suddenly forgot my number. I didn't grieve them. Losing allies I never truly had isn't loss. It's clarity. The only voice that reached through the noise came in a box from Gwenna. We hadn't spoken since high school. Inside, a single veteran's pin and a note. They don't deserve your service, but the world still needs it. It was the first thing I pinned to my jacket in months. The next day, I drove out to the cemetery on the edge of town, the one with the wide trees and rusting gates that always creaked no matter how recently they'd been oiled. I hadn't been there in years. I sat beside my father's grave, the wind shifting through the mesquite. I kept fighting, Dad, I said. Just not for them anymore. I pulled a copy of the inheritance paperwork from my folder and laid it gently at the base of the headstone. Across the top, in red ink, I'd stamped one word: resolved. I didn't cry, but I breathed deeper than I had in weeks. The following morning, I opened the door to find another certified envelope waiting for me. Mediation request, from Isolde. Inside was a handwritten note in her usual looping script. If you wanted war, congratulations. Let's negotiate. I set the letter down beside my father's card, read it twice, folded it neatly. Then I whispered, not with bitterness, but with finality. War was your word. Mine was justice. The mediation office sat 2 blocks off the plaza in Santa Fe, tucked between a consignment art shop and a dentist's office with a permanently faded open sign. I'd driven past it 100 times over the years, never noticing. Funny how certain doors only appear once you're ready to walk through them. Vera and Isolde were already inside when I arrived, seated at a long blonde wood table like they were waiting for a board meeting. Isolde wore a beige suit, her hair pulled into a low knot. Vera had chosen pearls. I walked in with my spine straight, wearing jeans and a black button-down that didn't apologize for anything. The mediator, a woman named Carla, with a voice like gravel and good sense, opened with a line that made Vera blink. "We're here not just to divide assets, but to acknowledge harm." Isolde shifted, already poised for objection. "We'd prefer to handle this privately. Family matters should stay within the family." I didn't even look at her when I replied. "We're past secrecy." The documents were lined up in order. Itemized claims, transfer dates, property valuations, fraudulent signatures, my name removed from deeds, my service benefits redirected. Midway through, Isolde slid a folder across the table. "A financial settlement. A public retraction, too. You'll get your closure. And in exchange, you sign an NDA." Carla looked at me. "Maribel?" I didn't reach for the folder. "I don't want hush money," I said. "I want a clean break." Vera didn't speak. Her hands were folded in her lap. She looked at the table, then past it, like if she ignored the conversation long enough, it would dissolve. But it didn't. Carla nodded slowly. "Then we proceed." Papers were signed. Initialed. Not out of defeat, but out of something better. Release. I rose first, collected my bag. As I reached the door, Isolde muttered under her breath, "You'll regret this." I turned to face her fully. "I already spent a decade regretting silence. I'm done." Then I reached into my folder and pulled out a single document, an old property deed. The one for our father's wristwatch, left in writing to me, but mysteriously missing when the estate was settled. I'd found it last month, buried in our mother's filing cabinet, with Isolde's name crudely penned over mine in blue ink. I placed it on the table. "I'm not pressing charges," I said, "but I'm not letting you pretend it never happened either." Outside, the air felt lighter. I drove for almost an hour without a destination, eventually stopping at a high overlook that faced the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. The sky was heavy with lavender dusk. I sat on the hood of the rental car, legs crossed, jacket zipped halfway. "I kept fighting, Dad," I whispered aloud. "I just stopped fighting for them." I pulled out a copy of the settlement paperwork and placed it inside a small tin I'd kept from basic training. Tucked in beside it was the birthday card he never mailed, the one Vera had hidden, the one that had waited years to be read. I added a single word on top of the folder. Resolved. When I returned to the rental, the house was quiet. I'd unplugged the TV days ago. My phone buzzed with a package alert. A letter. From Washington State. I opened it carefully, unfolding thick stationery. "Maribel, your father always knew you were the one with the spine. He just never knew how to show it. We served together in '85. He talked about you every week. I thought you should know that. Signed, Lieutenant Cole Bruce Evans, Ret." I read it twice, then folded it back into the envelope and slid it into my duffel. Turns out, I didn't walk away empty-handed. I just stopped carrying things that weren't mine. I hadn't expected to feel peace when I hit publish, but I did. The final post on my veterans blog went live at sunrise, timed not for drama, but for dignity. It wasn't a tell-all. I didn't name anyone. I didn't need to. I wrote, "I didn't want revenge. I wanted my voice back, and now I don't need theirs." It was the truth, and for the first time in years, I wasn't worried about how they'd twist it. The post detailed everything: the years of absence disguised as decorum, the deflection masked as concern, the erasure dressed in pearls and passive smiles. It included excerpts from legal filings, quotes from the mediation, my own reflections from the sleepless nights when I'd almost let it all slide. By noon, the ripple had become a wave. Vera was quietly removed from the church board she'd chaired for nearly a decade. The official statement cited ongoing family matters. No one needed more detail. Those who knew, knew. Isolda's blog took a sharper hit. 3 brand partnerships severed ties by end of day. A local paper ran a headline the next morning: Veteran wins quiet battle over family betrayal. Underneath was a quote from one of her old sponsors: "We support truth-tellers, even when it's uncomfortable." I received a message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to since high school. "You changed the family story, for the better." A week later, a formal notice arrived. Vera and Isolda had relinquished all claims to the house. No conditions, no bargaining. It came with a letter, not from them, but their lawyer. The tone was measured, almost apologetic. The implication was clear. This was an act of self-preservation, not remorse. I signed the transfer documents. Then, I turned the house over to a foundation that supported women veterans escaping domestic estrangement and emotional neglect. A place where healing didn't require silence. I didn't fight for a house. I fought to prove I didn't need to beg to belong. A month passed. I moved into a modest home on the outskirts of Sedona, Arizona. Quiet, sun-drenched, with enough space for breathing and not much else. It was exactly what I needed. I took a job mentoring young female recruits, some of them barely old enough to vote, but already sharper than most of the men who had ever tried to command them. My office had only one framed item: a birthday card. My father's handwriting, faded but legible. "I believe in you." I read it aloud for the first time while sitting on the porch one morning, coffee in hand, red rock cliffs catching the first light of day. I didn't cry, not in sorrow, just in recognition. He hadn't said it when I needed it, but he'd said it, and somehow that still counted. That evening, I opened my laptop and wrote the final journal entry of this chapter of my life. They wanted to erase me, but I rewrote the story, not with their names, but with my own. I hit save, closed the lid, exhaled. My name is Maribel, and I came back from war. Not the one overseas, the one right here. And I won.